I make this statement with both pride and sorrow. Sorrow for the pain inflicted on the victims and their families by the perpetrators of these vile and sickening crimes. Hopefully, the successful prosecution brings some closure for them. And pride in the dedicated and professional police investigations which officers from both Lothian and Borders Police and the Scottish Crime and Drug Enforcement Agency who were responsible for the success of Operation Algebra. These truly appalling crimes were uncovered and the perpetrators successfully brought to justice thanks to the outstanding work of the police officers and prosecutors involved, and as a society we are deeply grateful for the work they do day in, day out. It was a case of global dimensions and shows we have a world-class police service. Operation Algebra is a historic case and a landmark for our criminal justice system, as it involves the first ever convictions in Scotland for conspiracy to commit abuse against children. When I met members of the Algebra investigative team in Craigmillar in my constituency in May and visited the agency's e-crime unit in September, the messages they gave to me were clear. The viewing of child abuse material on the internet is not a victimless crime. The demand for such images creates the abuse of children worldwide. To offenders or potential offenders, the law enforcement agencies are after you and they will get you. And anybody who views such material on the internet in Scotland faces the very real prospect of being caught and prosecuted and punished very severely. 6 members of the ring were jailed for a total of 43 years. Strachan was jailed for 24 years and Rennie was jailed for 21 years. And they were placed on orders for lifelong restriction. These sentences show how the police and prosecutors can intervene to stop those intent on committing child abuse. Though, however, there was success here, a heinous offence did take place. Therefore, it is always important to look to learn lessons from these cases, to continually improve operation, to improve public protection. Lothian and Borders Police, the City of Edinburgh Council and NHS Lothian undertook a significant case review of their handling of Neil Strachan, a registered sex offender. I received a copy of the review this week. The findings are confidential and are for local agencies to consider. There are no recommendations for the Scottish Government around legislation or guidance, although we will work, obviously, with the responsible authorities to help disseminate any operational lessons that need to be addressed. In the case of people like Rennie and Strachan, we need to remember that we are dealing with some deeply devious and highly manipulative individuals who will in some cases go out of their way to get round the checks placed upon them, however stringent the restrictions and monitoring they are subject to or are. Law enforcement agencies continue their work to bring perpetrators to justice. Operation Alba is one such case, with the police currently utilising intelligence and a range of investigative and technological techniques to detect those involved in such abuse. In terms of what we are doing, I wrote to Paul Martin and Bill Aitken, the convener of the Justice Committee, on 17 June, to update them on the significant progress in implementing the 33 recommendations of the subcommittee's report on child sex offenders from the last Parliament. Our assessment is that 29 have already been delivered, and of the remaining recommendations, we will deliver those that fall within our legal powers. We are determined to make sure a robust legislative framework is in place for those who manage sex offenders, and to do so as effectively as is possible. For example, Through the Criminal Justice and Licensing Bill, we intend to, for example, further tighten the Sexual Offences Prevention Orders regime to impose new positive obligations as well as negative ones on high-risk sex offenders. For example, this could require offenders to provide more household and social data, including email addresses, and if they're living in the same household as a child. Further strengthen the requirements for homeless sex offenders, and ensure that anyone subject to a foreign travel order will have to surrender their passport to the police. We've also taken forward the committee's recommendations on a public information strategy. We've produced online and print materials to inform and advise families about child sexual abuse and indeed the measures in place to try and keep our communities safe. We all understand the wish and desire of parents, carers and guardians to better protect their children from harm. Nothing matters more to a parent. The Tayside Community Disclosure Pilot, which I launched in September, and which I am grateful has the support of all parties in Parliament, is a very positive development. I welcome and am grateful for that all-party support. The Chamber is united in the need to do everything that is possible to protect our children from harm. The pilot also links well with the strengthened multi-agency public protection working arrangements brought in under the Management of Offenders Scotland Act 2005. MAPA has led to better information sharing between and amongst the relevant authorities. We are very aware that any disclosure of information about sex offenders living in the community is a hugely sensitive and complicated process, and we do require to weigh up in conflicting rights. And we do take the consideration of disclosure very seriously indeed. So we will not rush this process, and we are making sure that every issue is well thought through. The Scottish Government is funding a full evaluation of this pilot to determine how successful it has been. But I can give the Chamber the assurance that, assuming the pilot is a success, our aim is and will be to roll it out across Scotland in every jurisdiction for every community. Our priority is to ensure that police and local agencies are equipped to protect our communities. Therefore, to sum up, Deputy Presiding Officer, I do believe that we've achieved a great deal in tackling the menace of sex offenders, and we do build upon this good work, much of which we inherited from my predecessor, because, as I've said today, and indeed was said by colleagues on the radio, this is not a party political issue. We have, as a government, introduced more robust arrangements for managing sex offenders in the community. We are working with the police and their criminal justice partners to ensure the online protection of children from sex offenders is as robust as possible and can be. We will continue to implement the recommendations of the Justice Subcommittee and indeed the Justice Committee if and when it makes comments, and we will evaluate the Tayside Community Disclosure Pilot. So I hope that all of this reassures the Chamber that the Scottish Government remains committed to protecting our children from sex offenders. I want to continue to work closely with Parliament, stakeholders and communities to ensure the public receives the best possible protection from these terrible crimes. So I thank members for their support and cooperation to date, and I look forward to working with them, as we do with all agencies, to better protect our children.
The Cabinet Secretary will now take questions on the issues raised in the statement. I would ask members who wish to do so to press the request to speak buttons. Time is limited, so any questions should be focused and short. Richard Baker.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the advanced copy of his statement and join him in congratulating the police on their success in Operation Algebra. But it's also crucial to learn from these events, and where in particular monitoring of sex offenders must improve. I'm pleased the Cabinet Secretary has now read the report of the multi-agency review into the case. But I do question why this report is to remain confidential. This is a matter of the greatest public concern. Neil